If there were chariots found in the Red Sea, it would probably have something to do with the crossing of the sea.
Salvage divers just found Pharaoh's chariot wheel in the Red Sea, and it's not good for those who doubt the biblical account of the Exodus. Recently, a team of marine engineers, military divers, and underwater archeologists discovered coral-encrusted objects resembling ancient chariot wheels while exploring the Gulf of Aqaba. This compelling finding has ignited debate among religious scholars and scientists alike. Stick with me, because the story behind this claim is where things get interesting. What could this discovery mean for history as we know it? You're gonna want to stay till the end. Let's dive in. What does the Bible say about the Red Sea crossing? The story of the Red Sea crossing is often talked about as one of the most powerful and unforgettable moments in the Bible, and many people describe it as the point where everything changed for the Israelites. It was said that this dramatic event did not only mark their escape from the heavy and painful burden of slavery in Egypt, but it also became the beginning of their identity as a free nation chosen by God. People often wondered aloud what it must have felt like to stand at the edge of that sea, looking at the endless water in front and hearing the sound of a furious army behind. They imagined the panic, the fear, and the confusion. According to the book of Exodus, especially in chapters 13 and 14, after God sent 10 plagues on Egypt and after Pharaoh finally told the Israelites they could go, he soon changed his mind. It was said that Pharaoh gathered his strongest soldiers, including 600 special chariots, along with many more commanded chariots, and he sent them racing after the Israelites. The Israelites were reported to have quickly realized they were stuck between the sea and one of the most powerful armies in the world. People often ask themselves, who would not panic in a moment like that? They were said to have blamed Moses and questioned why he brought them there just to die. Moses was described as responding with a calm and confident voice, telling them not to be afraid and to stand firm because they would soon see how God would save them. According to the story, God then told Moses to stretch out his hand over the sea, and all through the night a strong east wind blew, pushing back the waters until dry ground appeared. Many retold how incredible it must have looked to see water standing like walls on both sides, while a dry path opened up in the middle. People often imagined walking through such a path, wondering if they too would have been brave enough to step forward. The Israelites were said to have crossed safely, and when the Egyptians followed, God caused chaos among them, making their chariot wheels twist and turn, slowing them down and confusing them. Then, when Moses stretched out his hand again at sunrise, the waters were said to have rushed back into place and covered the Egyptian army, leaving none of them alive. This moment was often shared as proof of God's power and love for his people. It was also described as the moment Israel truly began, and it became central to Jewish identity and faith. It continued to be celebrated every year during Passover as a reminder of God's deliverance. The story did not stop there either, because Christians later explained that the Red Sea crossing represented a symbolic picture of salvation and baptism. Paul in the New Testament talked about how just as the Israelites went through the water into a new life of freedom, Christians saw baptism as moving from sin into a new life with God. Many people spoke about how this event showed that God could help his people even when everything looked impossible. They also pointed out that it showed God's judgment against those who tried to destroy his plan. Over time, the crossing came to stand as a strong reminder that God was greater than fear, greater than danger, and greater than any enemy. People often asked themselves, if God could part a sea for them, what impossible situation could he not handle for anyone who trusted him? And so, generation after generation continued to tell this story, not just as a chapter in ancient history, but as a living reminder of faith, hope, and the unshakable belief that when God steps in to deliver his people, nothing in heaven or on earth can stand in the way. It wasn't simply a tale of escape, it became a promise, whispered through time, that miracles can split seas and rewrite destiny, but even the most extraordinary stories attract questions, and this one sparked the biggest of all. Can science explain the Red Sea miracle? Stay with me till the end. Can science explain the Red Sea miracle? For centuries, people have heard that scholars kept asking whether the dramatic parting of the Red Sea could have a scientific explanation as well as a spiritual meaning. Some believed it was a miracle, while others wondered if nature could have helped bring the moment to life. The conversation around this topic had always been passionate, curious, and sometimes even emotional. After all, how often did a story stand at the center of both faith and science for so many generations? Anyone who heard these debates could almost imagine ancient thinkers sitting around asking the same thing. Did it really happen in a supernatural way? Or could the world itself have played a role? There were skeptics, of course. People recalled how Egyptian archaeologist Zahi Hawass had once said that the whole Exodus story was nothing more than a myth because, in his view, there was no historical evidence to support it. Many biblical doubters believed that miracles were simply impossible, or that the extraordinary tone of the Old Testament meant one should not take such things literally. They often said that if something sounded too fantastic, then it must not have happened. Yet others did not dismiss the event so quickly. Instead, they wanted to understand, to search, to see if nature could offer clues. After all, was it not natural for humans to want answers to big mysteries? And if science and faith could meet halfway, would that not be even more fascinating? That curiosity led some researchers to study the story in a more scientific light. People explained that scholars had explored 4 main theories. These included a rare type of storm called a medicane that could cause negative storm surges, strong winds that pushed water aside in what scientists called the wind set-down effect, tidal patterns that might create sudden openings in water, and a process known as Rossby waves. Each theory tried to answer the same question: could powerful natural forces really open a path through water long enough for people to cross? It seemed almost unbelievable, yet nature had surprised humans many times before. So why not here too? If wind could bend trees and break houses, could it not also move water? Then came the geological studies. Some researchers tried to find physical locations that matched the story. People remembered how Carl Drews from the National Center for Atmospheric Research had run computer simulations suggesting that winds blowing at around 63 to 64 miles per hour overnight could push back waters in an area called the Lake of Tanis in Egypt's eastern Nile Delta. His work showed that such winds could create a land bridge about 3 miles wide and over 2 miles long, and that this pathway might stay open for around 4 hours. 4 hours. Just enough time for a determined group to cross if they moved with purpose. And did that not make one wonder? Could timing, nature, and circumstance all come together in a moment that felt miraculous even if it had a scientific side? There was also the work of Professor Nathan Paldor from Hebrew University, who said strong northwesterly winds of 40 to 45 miles per hour could cause water to recede and expose underwater ridges. History even offered a curious moment that made people think twice. They recalled stories that Napoleon Bonaparte's soldiers once crossed part of the Gulf of Suez during low tide in the late 1700s. The record claimed they almost drowned when the water suddenly returned. Was that not a striking reminder that nature could behave dramatically and unpredictably, almost as if echoing ancient tales? Yet another place entered the conversation, and it captured attention in recent years. Many spoke about how researchers started focusing on the Gulf of Aqaba as a possible crossing point. Dr. Glenn Fritz studied underwater maps and said that the slope beneath the water at a place called Nuweiba Beach might actually be passable. The west side of the underwater path dropped at an angle of about 10.5%, and the east side rose again at around 13%. These slopes sounded steep, but people mentioned that they were still within limits similar to certain interstate highways. If modern cars could handle it, could ancient travelers, driven by desperation and faith, have done the same? It made one pause and think. Bob Cornuke from the Biblical Archaeology, Search and Exploration Institute claimed there was a shallow underwater path near the Straits of Tiran. Some thought it was convincing. Others disagreed, pointing out that there seemed to be a deep gap in the route that would have prevented any crossing unless the land had changed since then. And that raised another question many had whispered for years. Had the Earth itself shifted enough over time to hide what once existed? Nature was never still, after all. So the debate continued. Scholars spoke, believers reflected, and skeptics questioned. Some said science could never explain a miracle because a miracle lived beyond natural laws. Others said every ancient story deserved a fair look through the lens of history and physics. People often found themselves wrestling with a quiet question: what truly matters in a story like this? Is every detail supposed to be proven beyond doubt? Or is the deeper meaning where the real truth lives? Because sometimes history and faith don't clash. Sometimes they dance. And if you stay with me till the very end, you'll see why countless people still debate this moment with passion, curiosity, and goosebumps. So let's go deeper together. Did divers really find Pharaoh's chariot wheel in the Red Sea? For many years, people had heard claims that ancient Egyptian chariot wheels were found in the Red Sea, and they noticed how these claims always stirred strong feelings between archaeologists, historians, and believers. Some wondered why such a story refused to fade away. Others asked themselves if there was something deeper behind it, or if it was simply another legend that people loved to hold on to. In early 2024, reports began to spread again about a salvage team working in the Gulf of Aqaba. They were said to have found coral-covered shapes on the seabed that looked like chariot wheels. Witnesses explained that some of these shapes had 4 spokes, while others had 6, which matched designs from ancient Egyptian war chariots. People who talked about it claimed that the divers also pointed out objects that looked like axles and broken chariot frames. Some even said there were human bones lying among the coral. The reports described how the location of these objects was especially interesting because it was near an underwater land bridge that had already been identified by scientists in earlier geological studies. Many readers found themselves pausing and thinking, could this be more than coincidence? Or had excitement and storytelling played a role in shaping the narrative? According to the descriptions being shared, the wheel shapes looked very similar to chariots used in Egypt during the 18th dynasty, a period when Egypt was powerful and well known for its military strength. People familiar with archaeology said that Egyptian royal chariots often had 4 to 6 spokes and sometimes used gold decorations. The reports also mentioned how the scattered placement of these objects across the seabed supposedly matched stories from religious texts that described soldiers drowning in confusion instead of falling in neat formation. Some who heard the story thought it made sense, while others quietly asked themselves, could scattered objects in the ocean really prove anything? Or was the human mind naturally eager to connect dots, even when evidence was uncertain? However, as excitement grew, critics pointed out that none of these supposed findings had been verified in academic journals or confirmed by independent teams. Experts reminded the public that the ocean creates strange shapes and that coral can grow in ways that make objects look like tools or wheels. There were also practical barriers. Salt water damages objects over time, and coral covers everything it touches, making it almost impossible to remove something without destroying its structure. Authorities in the region were said to have limited access to the site, explaining that the area needed protection and that unauthorized recovery efforts could damage delicate underwater formations. Some people walked away from these explanations, feeling unsettled, almost like they were only scratching the surface of something much bigger. Were these rules really about keeping people safe, or were they designed to keep certain truths locked away? And if there was anything truly world-shifting hidden behind all this secrecy, wouldn't we have seen signs by now? Still, the questions don't stop, and neither does the curiosity. Stick with me till the very end, because the answers get even more surprising as we explore the line between belief and proof. How are faith and science interpreting the evidence? He explained that the alleged discovery of chariot wheels under the waters of the Gulf of Aqaba had sparked a major divide between people who relied on faith and those who believed only in science. He shared that believers were quick to see this as a powerful sign, confirming a story they had held dear for generations, and they described how these finds felt like a window into a miracle told in the book of Exodus. He mentioned that they often pointed out that the area already held deep meaning, full of ancient history and religious tradition, so finding such objects there seemed almost fitting. He said that believers talked about the unusual conditions under the water, such as brine pools with almost no oxygen, and they explained that these pools could act like natural time capsules, keeping wooden objects preserved for thousands of years when normally they would have rotted away. He wondered aloud why such rare circumstances would exist in the exact place tied to such an important story if there was no truth behind it. Was it coincidence, or was something bigger at play? He then shared that, on the other side of the debate, skeptics did not accept these claims so easily. He noted that scientists insisted there was no peer-reviewed research proving that the objects were truly chariot wheels from ancient times. He described how many archaeologists argued that even though the coral-covered shapes looked interesting, they could have been natural coral formations, or even debris from unrelated events. He added that well-known experts like Egyptologist Zahi Hawass had openly dismissed the idea, saying that there was simply no historical proof and that sometimes scholars had to admit that certain events likely never happened the way religious tradition described. He hinted that skeptics felt frustrated when stories like this spread without solid evidence because they believed such claims could harm serious academic work. He asked why some people found it so hard to accept that evidence mattered, and he also wondered why others were so certain that faith alone was enough. As the discussion continued, he pointed out that this argument was not just about a few underwater objects. He explained that it represented something much deeper, a kind of tug-of-war between two ways of seeing the world. He described how some scientists were now taking a softer approach, saying they respected parts of scripture but still removed the supernatural elements, treating miracles more as symbolic than literal. He thought that was interesting because it allowed them to agree with some parts of religious stories while still staying within the boundaries of science. But he also noted that this created another question: who got to decide which parts of history were true and which parts were simply stories? Did scientists become the final judges of truth, or did faith still hold space in the conversation? He said that many believed that biblical archaeology faced a delicate path ahead. It had to respect both ancient texts and scientific tools because both offered unique insights. He admitted that sometimes people forgot that interpretation often started with personal beliefs. Someone who approached history with faith naturally saw meaning in discoveries, while someone who approached it from a purely logical mindset looked for data and proof first. He wondered if there would ever be a way for both sides to meet in the middle, or whether this debate would continue forever. Could faith and science work together without one trying to overpower the other? He suggested that perhaps the real lesson was not just about chariot wheels or coral formations, but about how humans searched for truth. He reflected that people often saw what they already believed in the world around them, and he said that maybe the real mystery was not only what lay beneath the water, but what lay inside every person's way of seeing and understanding the past. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.